In this segment, we will identify typical patterns and methods of operation of child molesters. A child molester is described as a person older than the victim, male or female, which experiences any type of sexual act with a child. The majority of child molesters are male. Who is the typical child molester? Often camps, churches, and communities fall victim to the stranger danger misconception by believing that molesters are dirty old men or strangers in trench coats. These stereotypes are not only inaccurate, but dangerous, as they allow a false sense of security. Often the public becomes obsessed with the stereotype while never suspecting that the real molester might be a respected member of the church, camp staff, or community. There are two types of child molesters: preferential offenders and situational offenders. Preferential offenders have a particular sexual preference for children of a particular age, gender, or a child with specific physical characteristics. Extremely dangerous because of their predatory nature. Proactive in seeking their victim and aggressively engage in bold and repeated attempts to molest a child. Invest significant amounts of time, energy, money, and other resources to fulfill their sexual desires. Have excessive interest in children, seek access to children, and frequently move to avoid capture. May maintain pornographic collections and photograph children and/or their victims. This type of offender may appear to be the ideal children's or youth worker. They enjoy children. They socialize well among children. The best way to stop this kind of offender is to develop an environment that puts the offender at risk, not the child. A thorough screening program, proper supervision, and accountability will discourage this type of an offender. Situational offenders. Far more situational offenders exist in society than preferential offenders, but they have fewer victims. Situational offenders are opportunists engaging in misconduct when the opportunity presents itself, are indiscriminate concerning whom they molest, and act completely on impulse. An example of a situational offender would be a youth worker who plans various activities for his youth. After the meeting, he takes several of the students home. The last person to be dropped off is a young girl who comes from a dysfunctional family. A pattern develops where the offender and the girl sit in the car and talk for an extended period of time. One thing leads to another. The opportunity presents itself, and the youth worker has a sexual relationship with the girl. To reduce the risk of situational molestation, camps must again create an environment of accountability. Screening and supervision are the two key strategies to establish such an environment and, in turn, reduce the risk of sexual molestation. Methods of operation. Sexual predators could employ any of the following methods or strategies to gain access to a child. Seduction. The molester usually is known to the child. He spends time with the child and normally is trusted by the child. The initial contact with the child is non-sexual, but over time advances to be sexual in nature. That's a technique called grooming, where the molester offers gifts or favors to gain the trust of the child. Trickery. Molesters are creative in using the natural desires of a child. Children see adults as authoritative figures. Children are naturally curious and need attention and affection. A molester may use these natural tendencies to trick the child into a situation where these molestations can occur. Force. Usually, there is little a child can do to resist force. When force is used, the child is rarely acquainted with the molester. Let's move on to our last method. Secrecy is the common thread in these methods of operation. Secrecy is maintained by several methods. They include, but are not limited to, bribery. This could include gifts, animals, or any favors that interest a child. Blame. The molester tells the child they are at fault for what has happened. Embarrassment. Children realize that what has taken place is wrong. loss of affection. Often the molester is a person that is loved by the child. Displaced responsibility. The child blames themselves for the molestation. Threats. The molester will threaten the child or someone in the child's family with physical harm. Again, there are two types of offenders, preferential and situational, and they have many different methods of operation. But with proper screening and supervision and accountability, we create an environment that will put the offender at risk and not our children.